Hey guys, I just uploaded a video a few days ago about Larry Scott, the very first Mr. Olympia's bulking diet. Well, interestingly enough, a few days later I found an article that he himself wrote about what he calls training down, or these days we call it cutting fat or going on a definition diet. And I'm going to go ahead and discuss the parameters of the diet. First of all, not surprisingly, considering that he was trained by Vince Gironda, the guy who came up with a steak and eggs diet, and that he got a lot of his nutritional advice as well as his supplements from a guy called Rio Blair, who is also a pioneer of low-carb, high-fat diets. This is basically going to be a ketogenic diet, okay? Definition diet. I have found that the most effective definition diet is a high-protein and fat diet, almost completely void of carbohydrates. The protein retains the muscle size while the fats provide a limited source of energy, parentheses, the rest being obtained from stored fat. Some low carbohydrate vegetables should be eaten to maintain bowel regularity. Now that's interesting because it's basically the same thing that Vince Gironda did. Okay, Vince Gironda said you could eat as much meat and as many eggs as you want, and one salad a day for the fiber for bowel regularity, okay? But Larry Scott went a lot farther than Vince Gironda did, because where Vince said basically eat as much meat and as many eggs as you want, but don't eat anything with carbs, Larry Scott said you could basically eat whatever you want, but he actually gave you parameters for how many carbohydrates you can eat, okay? For instance, Vince Gironda said when you're doing a definition diet, you shouldn't take in any dairy except for heavy cream, which is practically 0 carbs, okay? Whereas Larry Scott says milk should be limited to at most 1 quart or less per day, okay? Carbohydrate intake should be limited to less than 50 grams per day. Check the carbohydrate content of the foods closely before organizing a definition diet. To give you some basic idea of the type of foods you should consume, the following foods have less than 1 gram of carbs per serving. Use as many as you can in your daily menus. Beef, bacon, butter, cheese, except cottage, which of course is not a real cheese. Chicken, eggs, fish, lamb, oil, sardines, shrimp, tuna, veal. Then he went on to talk about the foods you could eat that actually do have a considerable amount of carbohydrates in them. And this is interesting because I get a lot of questions about people going on the steak and eggs diet. Can I eat almonds? Can I eat avocados? Can I eat peanut butter? All kinds of things. He wrote, foods which are moderate in carbohydrates, containing less than 10 grams per serving, should be used, but be careful not to exceed a total of 50 grams daily in your diet. Almonds, 1 cup. Broccoli, 1 cup. Asparagus, avocado, beans, cottage cheese, 1 cup. Cabbage, cantaloupe, clams, cucumbers, beef liver, peppers. Note, almost all vegetables should be of a fresh variety. A good salad can safely be eaten without adding much to your carbohydrate count. Like I said, you need some kind of fiber just to maintain digestive function, okay? And if you eat lettuce leaves, you can eat basically as much as you want because the little bit of carbs in them are fiber. Fiber doesn't get broken down, so it doesn't really count, okay? Like I said, for the people that keep asking, can you eat almonds? Can you eat peanut butter? Can you eat, avocados? You just need to make sure that you keep your total carbs down. For instance, right now I'm on what I call the pure protein diet. I'm basically eating chicken for protein and I'm eating peanuts for fat. That's okay, just like he said that almonds are okay. However, I need to make sure that the amount of peanuts that I eat does not raise the amount of carbohydrates I eat too much because there are a lot of carbs in nuts, okay? For cottage cheese, okay, that's like 10 grams per serving, 12 grams per serving. He ate a lot of cottage cheese on a bulking diet, but he has to be careful about how much he eats when he's on a cut because, like he said, he wants to keep his carbs below 50 grams a day, and a cup of cottage cheese has like 10 or 12 grams just alone, okay? Then he went on, which is once again very interesting, he talked about foods which are very high in carbohydrates should be avoided at all times. Substitute similar low-carb foods for these. Apples, apricots, beans, most types, beer and ale, bread, cookies, cakes, dates, candy, fruits packed in syrup, grape juice, potatoes, prunes, rice, spaghetti and macaroni, sugar, all sugar products. Now, like I said, the most common diet from the 60s, 70s, 50s, for definition, was Vince Gironda's steak and eggs diet. And he basically said, eat as much as you want, as long as it's low carb. Okay, however, like I said, Larry Scott took it a step further, and not only did he talk about how many carbs you can eat in a day, if you're going to eat food that has a few more carbs in it, he also talked about different variations of this diet to get faster results. For instance, faster results are obtained by keeping the carbohydrate level below 30 grams per day. Another good method is to have up to 50 grams of carbohydrates one day and no more than 10 to 20 grams the next day. In any case, careful examination of what and how much you are eating is the only way to succeed. Now, like I said, the biggest difference between Larry Scott's version of this diet and Vince Gironda's is Vince never talked about the total calories. I personally have found that it is very easy to overeat and take in too many calories when you're eating carbohydrates. The old joke is, if you eat Chinese food, an hour later you're hungry again. Well, that's more than a joke, because the fact is you have sugary sauces and carbs in Asian food. So if you eat it, you burn it up, your insulin level goes up and down, and you end up being hungry right afterwards. However, it's really hard to eat too much if you're just eating protein and fat. I mean, if you eat a plate of bacon, you'll be satisfied for hours. You won't want to eat more. But like I said, Asian food, cookies, potato chips, ice cream, drinking sugary soda, it's easy to go over on carbs. So that's why it's less important to count your calories when you're on a low carb, high fat diet. However, he says, generally speaking, you can eat as much of the high protein, low carbohydrate foods as you wish, providing you don't exceed 2,500 total calories per day. You must have a negative calorie balance in addition to a low carbohydrate intake to get the real fat burning definition producing effect. Now, I looked this up. Okay, he had an off-season weight of 215 pounds and he had a contest weight of 205 pounds. So if you figure that out, 2,500 calories, lean body weight of 205, that comes down to about 12 calories per pound of lean body weight if you want to decide exactly how many calories you should be taking in or how many calories you should not be exceeding. Now, like I said in the other video about his bulking diet, Larry Scott was excellent, okay? I mean, it was, I think, 65 and 66 where he won the first two Mr. Olympias ever. The guy was 5'7", 205 pounds, in contest shape. He had 20-inch upper arms, and he had a 29-inch waist, okay? Which is really saying something, because not only was he huge, and there were very limited drugs then. People were talking, no, it's not just diet alone. Yeah, probably a couple D-ball tabs, but it wasn't like he was using insulin, growth hormone, and so many different types of steroids like there are today. I mean, it was the 60s, okay? So with limited use of steroids, he was able to not only get 20-inch upper arms at a height of 5'7", but he was also able to get a 29-inch waist at the same time. So like I said, his bulking diet is important to look at and to learn whether you're using drugs or not, but it's also just as important, whether you're using drugs or not, to look at his cutting diet, because he was able to maintain that size and get down to a 29-inch waist, which is by no means fat.